Anthony Kimbrough was sentenced to life without parole for shooting and killing Officer Gus Spanos during a traffic stop in 1993. And prosecutors say he's been trying to find a way to get out of prison ever since.
News on 6's Reagan Ledbetter reports the Spanos family hopes this is finally the end. Reagan?
Craig and Tatum, prosecutors and Gus Spanos' widow say the jury got it right, and DNA testing 30 years later isn't going to change all the overwhelming evidence against Kimbrough. Now, that evidence includes an eyewitness and Kimbrough himself telling multiple family members he shot a cop. Today, the judge agreed.
Every time we hear his name, it brings up the pain and the hurt.
Gus Spanos' widow, Christy Mulkey, says it's frustrating. She's still in a courtroom 30 years later having to fight for Gus and the truth.
You're literally 30 years later going through this again, seeing his face. I hope he realizes now that he's just at a lost cause.
Anthony Kimbrough has been arguing his innocence for 3 decades and recently asked for DNA testing on a set of fingerprints, a shell casing from the murder scene, and a pillow that were all used as evidence during the trial. He says DNA tests would prove he wasn't the shooter. But in order to get the DNA testing, Kimbrough's attorney had to prove 5 things, including that there is reasonable probability that if favorable results come from the DNA test, that the outcome of the trial would have been different. The judge and prosecutors say the DNA is irrelevant because there's plenty of other evidence, like Kimbrough telling his cousin he shot Spanos because he didn't want to go to jail.
And when his uncle confronted him and asked him, "Did you shoot that police officer?" his response was, "I hid the car, I hid the gun."
Prosecutors say the work doesn't stop after a conviction. They keep working to protect the conviction, even 30 years later.
It is amazing today to be in a courtroom filled with people who remember Officer Gus Spanos and want to make sure the truth is still out there and everyone knows what happened to him.
He thinks he had a fight, but Gus didn't have a fight. He was killed immediately, and Judge Moody put the end of the fight today.
Now, Kimbrough can now appeal today's decision to the Oklahoma Court of Criminal Appeals. Live in downtown Tulsa, Reagan Ledbetter, Oklahoma's Own, News on 6.